The air was crisp that night, the kind of cold that bites at your skin and makes you pull your jacket tighter. I had just arrived at Duke University, the campus sprawling before me like a maze of brick and ivy. The Duke hoodie I'd ordered online fit snugly, helping me blend in with the sea of students milling about. But as I walked, a snippet of conversation caught my ear. Two girls were talking, their voices low and urgent. One of them mentioned something about a strange breathing sound coming from one of the dorms. I didn't think much of it at the time, just another college rumor probably. But something about the way she said it, the way her eyes darted around as if someone might be listening, made me pause. I shook it off and kept walking, heading toward Scott's dorm. Scott was an old friend, someone I'd known since high school. He'd invited me to visit for the day, and I was excited to catch up. But when I walked into his room, the atmosphere felt off. Scott was sitting on his bed, his face pale, his hands fidgeting with the edge of his blanket. Olivia, his girlfriend, was perched on the desk chair, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Andrew, a burly guy from the wrestling team, leaned against the wall, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a tense silence. The room felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "What's going on? You guys look like you've seen a ghost." Scott glanced at Olivia, then at Andrew, before finally meeting my eyes. "I didn't want to freak you out before you got here," he began, his voice shaky. "But something's been happening at night. I thought I was going crazy, but I needed you to hear it too, to make sure I'm not imagining things." I frowned, my stomach tightening. "Hear what?" "Breathing," Olivia said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "In the hallway, late at night. It's not normal." Andrew nodded, his jaw clenched. "I haven't heard it myself, but Scott's not the only one. A couple of other people on the floor have mentioned it too." I looked at Scott, my mind racing. "When does it happen?" "Around 11 p.m., he said, his voice trembling. "Every night for the past few days, it's like something's out there waiting." The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over us like a thick fog. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to laugh it off, to tell them they were being ridiculous. But the look in Scott's eyes stopped me. He was scared. Really scared. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's see what happens tonight. If it's real, we'll figure it out together." The hours dragged by as we tried to distract ourselves with games and TV. But as 10:30 approached, the tension in the room became unbearable. Scott turned off the lights, plunging us into darkness. We sat in silence, our ears straining for any sound. The minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. I was about to suggest we call it a night when it happened. The sound was low and guttural, like the deep, labored breathing of someone or something just outside the door. My heart slammed against my ribs, my breath catching in my throat. I glanced at Olivia, who was sitting rigidly still, her eyes wide with fear. "It sounds like Darth Vader," I whispered, my voice trembling. She nodded silently, her hands gripping the edge of the chair. Scott was typing furiously on his phone, the glow of the screen illuminating his pale face. He showed me the screen. It's exactly that. The breathing continued, each inhale and exhale sending a fresh wave of terror through me. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. It couldn't be real. It had to be a prank, some kind of elaborate joke. But the fear in the room was palpable, and I knew deep down that this was no joke. After what felt like an eternity, my fear turned to anger. I couldn't take it anymore. I reached for the light switch and flipped it on, flooding the room with brightness. The breathing stopped instantly, as if it had never been there at all. I threw open the door, my heart pounding, but the hallway was empty. No one was there. No students, no teachers, no animals. Just the eerie silence of the dorm. "How long has this been happening?" I demanded, turning to Scott. "Since Tuesday," he said, his voice barely audible. "3 nights. Ago?" Andrew and Olivia both nodded, confirming that they had heard it too. Whatever it wasn't just in Scott's head. There was something in the hallway, something none of us could explain. The next day, I decided to stay another night. I had to know what was going on. We followed the same routine, turning off the lights at 10:30 and waiting in silence. This time, the breathing started at 11:24. The sound was louder, more intense, as if whatever was out there was getting closer. I could feel my pulse racing, my hands trembling. Andrew was shaking, his face pale. Olivia had her hands over her ears, her eyes squeezed shut. Scott was blinking rapidly, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The terror was overwhelming, suffocating. I couldn't take it anymore. "Turn on the light," I hissed, my voice breaking. Scott fumbled for the switch and the room was flooded with light once again. The breathing stopped, but the fear lingered. Olivia, Andrew, and Scott decided to sleep in a friend's room that night, too scared to stay in Scott's dorm. I bolted for my car, my heart still pounding, my mind racing with questions. The next day, Scott reported the incident to a teacher, who dismissed it as the sound of air and rumblings from the laundry room vents downstairs. But none of us bought it. I'd lived in buildings with laundry rooms before, and I'd never heard anything like that. Scott, Andrew, Olivia, and Nick, another student who had heard the breathing, all agreed that the explanation was weak. So what was it? A prank? A ghost? Something worse? I still don't know. All I know is that I never want to hear that sound again. The memory of those 2 nights haunts me, sending chills down my spine whenever I think about it. Whatever was in that hallway, it wasn't human. And I pray I never have to face it again.